Sunday evening, and earlier this evening I just recorded a heavy thunderstorm when we had torrential rain for about 15 or 20 minutes. Look at the nursery, still flooded. So what am I going to do? I love it when it's quiet, looking at all these lovely junipers. Many people look at the junipers and they see the intense grooming that has been done. So not all trees are like that. They start off at some point, they're usually unkempt. These are the small, when I say small, they're about at least 30 or 40 centimeter tall. These are Kisu junipers, and they've got potential, but they've got to be tidied up. And that's not all. These are very mature Itoigawas. These are about 70 centimeter tall. They're very expensive trees. But we've also got some very reasonably priced Kisu junipers. These have come from Japan. We've got several hundred of these. These are about, I would say, 50 centimeter tall. Some of them may be more than 50 centimeter. So I'm going to show you how we refine these. Although they look unkempt, but underneath these trees, there's some beautiful lines and forms in there. So I'm going to take it into the back greenhouse. I'm going to self-video because I don't have any assistant here. I'm going to put it on a new device that follows me around, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with them. So I'm trying something new today. I'm using a gimbal that follows me around, and I'm going to work behind the tree. I usually like to show views of me working on the tree, so what I see is what you see. But this is something new. I'm not sure this works well, but as I say, do bear with me, and I'm going to work on this Kisu juniper. These are the Kisus that are imported from Japan, and you will see that they're heavily wired, and of course the wires can now come off because the wires have done their work, and I will take the wires out. So I won't waste time showing you me taking the wires off. I usually do it by using the wire cutters and actually cutting into the wires to take them out. It's almost impossible to unwind them, so I will have to waste a bit of wire. So let me stop it for a while I do that. Yesterday I tried to do some self-videoing. That means I was on my own and I tried to set up the gimbal to follow me around. I tried to do it, but it didn't come out well. But I did learn something useful from that. What I did discover was that these trees, if you can see, these Kisu junipers, you see how heavily wired they are. Clear aluminum wire. This is about 4 mil, very heavy wire, all the way to the top to create that S shape. And not only that, the branches are wired with galvanized iron wire. Extremely difficult to remove and to cut out. So while I was doing that, I said to myself, it is worth showing you viewers what is involved. I've always believed that when you unwire a tree, you learn as much from unwiring the tree as you do from wiring the tree. Because when you unwire a tree, you can see what that grower has done. So you can see his techniques which are used. Does it make sense? I'm sure it'll make sense. So I'm going to take you through the process of unwiring the tree because I will show you exactly how these Japanese growers have produced this tree. These trees, by the way, come from Japan. It's the Kisu juniper, not the Itoigawa. And the trunk, you can see, is as thick as my thumb, quite a thick trunk. And they must have bent it maybe a couple of years ago to be able to get that shape. So the wire has to be very, very strong. And these subsidiary branches are all fairly new branches, and they've been also wired into place. So I'm not going to talk about the style of the tree just yet. I'm going to just spend this video on showing you how to unwire the tree. As many of you will know, we always wire the branches after wiring the trunk. So if you are to remove the thick wire which is wiring the trunk, you should really take off the wires which are on the branches. Now when it comes to doing this job, there are several tools that I use. The most important tool is the wire cutter. This is where you cannot use ordinary European wire cutters. These are special Bonsai wire cutters. These are all our Herons own brand, stainless steel ones. This is a proper Japanese wire cutter made in Japan. The action is slightly different, but I use all three on just this tree. This is a smaller wire cutter, this is a slightly larger one. And the wire cutters are able to go into the wire and take it off. So the thick wire like that where you can, you've got to go in there and cut it off in several places. I know that when I sometimes show how I unwire a tree, I save the wire by unwiring it very carefully. But in this instance, this wire is so stiff and hard, I would do more damage trying to unwire the wire than to simply cut it off. So I can't just save a little bit of money doing that. Now, although I said I should remove the thin wires first, I will just proceed to cut some of these off and then cut all the thinner wires off later. It doesn't really matter because all the wires are going to come off. So the reason why I have several types of wire cutter is because certain wire cutters are able to do a job that the other bigger wire cutters can't do. So having these different wire cutters is helpful. I'm not trying to sell you different types of wire cutters, but I find that when you have a tree as complicated as this, these different wire cutters all perform a slightly different function and have a slightly different feel. Now this Japanese wire cutter is very powerful and it seems to cut into the wire very easily. But this one is more delicate, it's better for the fine wires. The other useful tool I have, you notice I have two of them, are these gin pliers. The gin pliers help you to unwire the wire, especially the thin ones, because the fingers are really not tough enough to remove the wire. Besides, the wire is quite sharp, and if you're not careful, you can hurt your fingers doing it. So I find the end of the wire, get hold of it, and then unwire it carefully. This is where I don't think cutting off the wire here and there helps. This is where with the fine wire, you can undo it. If you find it a bit much, you can try and cut some of it off. But having the ends extended like this helps me to unwire quite easily. A word about the use of the wire. They have used galvanized iron wire. Now, I would not advocate anyone to use galvanized iron wire to wire their trees. Not that it's impossible, but it is very, very difficult to handle. If you try using galvanized iron wire, I'm sure you would have a big, big problem. It is so stiff, very spiteful on the hands, and you would not get very far doing it. Now, this is where I use my small wire cutters, and I'm cutting it in places because I can't even get the gin pliers round it. So that is what the wire looks like. Galvanized wire, so stiff, almost impossible to use. I don't know how these poor people manage to wire the trees with that. They must anneal it to get it soft because it is extremely hard. Like copper wire, if you apply copper wire, it's okay when you apply it onto the tree because it's been annealed, but when it comes to removing the wire, it's a completely different matter because it has become hardened, so more difficult to remove. Now, I've always said that you can leave the wires on because it can allow the bark to go over the wire and embed it into the tree itself. But with branches, I don't think you can do it. If I was styling this tree, I would never use galvanized iron wire, but they obviously do it for economic reasons. It's much cheaper to use it. Don't forget, they're producing thousands and thousands of these trees. So if you used the cheaper galvanized iron wire, you're saving on the aluminum or copper wire. The main wire on the trunk is this very heavy and stiff aluminum wire. You see how hard it is to bend. No wonder they are able to bend such a thick trunk. So again here, if you look at this one, the wire has gone right round here. So I go usually to the end, find the end, and then unwire it from the end. I'm sure some of you who have bought these trees from us will learn from this. As I say, unwiring the tree is really beneficial because you get to know how it's actually done by the professionals. So 2-branch principle every time. And this is linked to another branch. So what about the wire marks? A lot of people are worried about wire marks, but there's no need to worry because once the wire marks have grown out, given time, it'll make the bark and the trunk look really old. I kid you not, this is really a struggle. But it certainly has to be removed. How I wish they used thinner aluminum wire. It would be much easier to remove. The fact that the wire is so thin, it's thinner than I think 1 millimeter. Getting the wire cutter to cut into that wire is quite a job. That's the wire holding the branch together. So after all this time, I've only removed the wire from 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of branches, 4.5 sets. There's some more here. See this wire here, they've done the 2 branches like that. So that wire is even thinner. That's like 0.5 millimeter galvanized wire. So they've used 2 gauges. You cannot rush this job. Those of you who are fairly new to this sort of task may be tempted to really rush it, but you just got to take your time and do it carefully and slowly. That's the first job. Once we removed all the wire, I will then show you how I go about improving this tree. This tree, for all intents and purposes, is only a tree in training. If you want to refine it and get it looking better, you've got to spend more time doing more work to it. So that is the length of wire they use to do 2 branches. There's still some wire embedded in there. Take it out. Who would have thought of showing a video on how to unwire a tree? But it's all an essential part of the process of bonsai. So these are the little bits that I've cut off. Can you see? That's what I'm cutting off in bits like that. So after spending all the time I only got up to here, I've got to remove the rest of this. Okay, I won't show you the rest of that now. Suffice it to say that you've got to go the entire length of the tree to undo every single scrap of wire. Now I will combine that second part of the video with the unwiring process because this I did last evening. So this one has been completely de-wired. There is no more wire on this. So how can I improve this further? I think like this tree, if you look at it, it is much too dense. It is much, much too dense. So let's show you how I would go about it. Remember that every time you look at a bonsai, it is the trunk which is of greatest interest. There's always a front and a back. If you look at this tree, there's so many branches at the back. This looks more like the back, whereas this is a more realistic or plausible front. So that is how I would use the tree. Now, unless you were wanting to thicken the trunk, I would keep these as what we call sacrificial branches. If you're looking to the long term, I would keep everything, don't do anything. But since I've committed myself to improving the look of this tree, I'm going to show you how I go about doing that. Okay, so showing the leg or showing the trunk is by far the most important thing. So I will remove these lower branches. These will all make beautiful cuttings. Remove this little one, no point even keeping them as gins. Juniper cuttings strike very easily. They take hardly any time. Minimum of 2 months, sometimes 3 months, and you will get a new plant. So I removed 3 branches from there. So you can see by removing 3 branches, I've got to show the trunk much more. It looks much better now. But now comes a rather curious thing that you might well ask, why am I doing that? Having just removed the wire, I'm going to rewire the tree. And you must be wondering why, am I mad or something? After taking all that trouble to unwire the tree, I'm going to wire it again. I'm going to rewire the tree because the branches are not hanging in the way I would like it to hang. So I'm now going to use, I think this is 2.5 millimeter wire, to rewire the branch. So, again using the 2 branch principle, you see I'm going to the back rather than taking the wire from the front, and I'm going to rewire it with aluminium wire. Brown anodized aluminium wire. I notice there's still a bit of wire stuck on this branch. Let me try and remove it, because if I don't remove it, it may make matters worse in the future. See, every little bit of wire has to be removed, otherwise you store up trouble for the future. You see that was embedded there? I didn't see it. I'm going to take that out. Okay, now I'm going to put this wire on. Okay, now I put the wire on. I'm going to arrange it in a slightly different way. You see, I've lifted the branches like that because I didn't like the way it was looking, hanging too much down. Okay, so this is a branch I can remove. Now I've got this back branch here. I'm now going to probably link it to an existing wired branch because it's too far up the tree to link to the second potential wireable branch. So this is just the two branch principle done this way. Anything hanging down too much, I take off. So you see, that's the sort of look I'm wanting to create. Compared to this one, can you see how it compares with this one? There are too many low branches. I've cleared the trunk. So it's getting a much more elegant look. Now again, this is too close there. Because it's too close, I'm going to take some of them off. It's always an advantage to have a lot of choice. If there wasn't a lot of choice, then you would be hard put to decide what to remove and what to cut. Because there's so many branches, I have the pick of the branches to keep or to remove. So the next one is going to be at that level, maybe that one, or this one at the back. So I'm going to do those two. So I'm changing the grade of wire. I'm now using 2mm wire. And the other one was 2.5. Make sure that there's no old wire attached to it. There's still little bits embedded in the trunk. These are the sorts of trees that most amateurs and hobbyists can manage or find affordable. Such a big tree, we're only selling this for about 190 pounds. Look at it, it's about 45 centimeters tall. You see how much more elegant it's beginning to look. I've only done 2 pairs of branches compared to one which is still like that. You can see the difference in the look. I'm now not going to show you too much further detail because I'm going to go up the tree and get to the top. When I get to the top, I will show it to you again.